Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Erasmus Expeditions. Tonight, we are going to be playing a one-shot that is set in the world of Momentum. And this one-shot is entitled, May Dawn Spare the Heathens. There is a campaign that is currently being run in the same world that you can find here on the channel called Whispers and Fragments. And there may be a little bit of crossover between some of these. So I'm really looking forward to this. I love how this world is starting to kind of shape up. It's still very, very gray, very malleable. So a lot of these games are leaving a lasting impression on the design of the world. So I'm excited to see what else is going to happen tonight. So before I do that, I'm going to say some things that I say. Oh, this is an adult game. This is an adult channel. These are all adults. So if foul language and mature topics are something that bother you, then this is not a good channel for you. The game is just a small sample of what you'll find here. And if that's the kind of thing that bothers you, then you're just in the wrong place. So before we get any further along, I think I'm going to stop talking, toss things over to these 5 players that I'm very, very excited to have in this game. Let them do the introductions. Then we'll get the ball rolling. So first up, we have Jason.
Hello, hello. My name is Jason Osorio, and tonight I will be playing a Satarad Bonekin, one of the Steading Bonekin, by the name of June Atnog, and he is a paladin, Oath of the Ancients, and I am very excited. This is my first Momentum game. I've seen some amazing art. Jeremy, of course, whipped up an amazing playlist, so I cannot wait to get started.
Excellent, man. It's been a while since I've had you in a game, so I'm excited to have you back on the channel.
Heck yeah.
Excellent. All right. Next up, we have Baron.
What's up, everyone? I'm Baron. I run the YouTube channel RWD Gaming. You can come check out some D&D live plays over there. We just had the Waterdeep campaign that we're playing. I think this is its 4th episode. That was last week. And you can see us tomorrow as we play test some stuff that I came up with. And you're going to hear about that tomorrow. So I won't go too much into it. I am playing Durnan Shadesun, Soutmore dwarf from the Abyss Down Under. I'm a cleric of the Forge, so ready to get holy on some motherfuckers.
Absolutely. And speaking of Down Under, Keel.
G'day, mates. I am Keel. I am, as always, stoked to be here. It's my 3rd time, I think, on Jeremy's channel, but my first time playing in a game actually run by him. The other 2 were in the Highlander tournament, which was also amazing fun. So I'm keen for this. Keen to play alongside Connor and Baron once more, and very keen to play alongside Karen and Jason for the first time. So keen to play in the world of Momentum. I've been following along the Whispers and Fragments campaign, and you all should too, because it's amazing. This world is shaping up to be something really, really awesome. It touches on so many of the things that I love, so I'm really keen that I had the chance to play in this session. I will be playing Artur Taras, a dwarf who fled the Edge Horizon, I think it's called, where the dwarves live at basically the edge of the world and go under and mine literally in hell underneath the world. But he fled there when he was young, and he was raised in the wild by an elven master, raised as a ranger. And yeah, we'll see how this goes.
Excellent. Yes, I'm very, very glad to have you back on the channel to actually be running in a game where I'll have a little more interaction with you. So next up, we have Karen.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Karen. I am so looking forward to jumping into this world again. I absolutely love it. And tonight, I'm going to be playing Navara Kaldim, Satarad Bonekin. She's a bard of the College of Valor, otherwise the the speaker of tales of her tribe. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing where this goes.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure to have you on. And I love, I'm in love with the Bonekin right now because that's the one that has been probably developed the most. And it's fairly unusual. And it's not one of the traditional fantasy races. So very, very excited to see some more of them get played. All right. Last but certainly not least, we have Connor.
Hey, I'm Connor from Dice on Ice, a YouTube channel where we do some videos and we do some videos. I'll be playing as Sija, a Sky Elf sorcerer who has been imbued with divine power through some kind of ancient prophecy built into the world of Momentum. And it'll be kind of cool to play that out.
Yeah, everybody who has mentioned a channel that they are with, you should be able to find the link to that in the description of this video below. If it's not there, let me know. I will add it ASAP. I mean, like, not during the game, but whatever. Okay. Do you guys have any last final questions before we get into this? No? Cool. All right, here we go. Winter clung to the world as though its 60-year reign had not been enough. At last, the priests and sages were saying spring had come. But after a third of year, spent under the dark skies of the first night, Havavendria seemed all too eager to reclaim the life that had begun to bloom. The Colossiahs, great and powerful though they are, could at times show the stubbornness of children. It is now, with these weeks of dawn upon us, that the people of Momentum begin to spread once again. Just 2 days ago, word reached us that the city of Mydakona was overrun with their own dead, that all those living had either been run off or killed. Mydakona has spoken to the priests and demanded that the mask of Shiala Gior be recovered from its resting place in the shrine of the Lake of Blades. It will be known by the glow of its eyes when in the presence of ether. Mydakona's will be done through you. So, each of you, if you would, in turn, let me know how your character came to be on board the elven airship that is chartered to fly you to this city. The name of this ship is the Lantern Bearer of Belorion.
So Durnan is probably the equivalent of seasick right now. Not my usual means of transportation, but alas, the light of Akun has driven me to find the lantern that will take me to where I need to go in this quest. For she has spoken me in some, I mean, maybe a fever dream of some sort of thing that I should be looking for, and I'll know and recognize the signs. So I think I have probably been tagging along with someone. So I don't know who I'm standing next to.
You just pick someone. Sounds like.
I'll go ahead and step up because why not? So yeah, Durnan, you probably met at some point during your wanderings this younger male bonekin of the Satarad, the steading bonekin. Very boisterous. Thank you, Jeremy, and not quite as broad as you would expect from a fully grown bonekin. He's very lanky, but he still has that sort of wiry musculature to him. And he introduced himself with a big grin and a friendly, friendly expression on his face as Jolly June Atanog from Stedding Vishara. And according to him, what he told you at least was he left his steading seeking adventure. He wants to become a legend. He wants his name to be spoken of in hushed, reverent whispers. He wants songs to be sung of his deeds, despite his young age. And he encountered something on the road. He encountered what he described as a spirit, some sort of colossal spectral entity that took the form of an stag, this creature that resembles what we would call a grizzly bear with these great branching horns. And this creature that he called Veld apparently tasked him with the retrieval of this mask, saving it from whatever plight had befallen Mydakona. And that is how he came to be on this elven airship. And the whole time he seems to be, again, very warm, very friendly, but definitely maybe trying a little too hard. So he's probably standing next to you, completely ignoring you, just gazing out at this sight before him, a big smile on his face, maybe occasionally scratching at one of his horns, a little bit of a nervous tick that you would know about.
Oi, lad, you don't get sick from these voyages, do you?
No, I do not, my friend. Veld has blessed me with strength. My stomach is like rock or iron, or rock and iron together.
Like iron well enough, but certainly when my belly doesn't feel like it.
And June would smile at that and then look over towards the other bonekin on this vessel, who he's probably talked to a little bit, probably boasting and bragging a little bit.
And she kind of looks up at him because at this moment she is sitting kind of midship, where she can't see over the edge. And she's just looking at June saying, I don't understand why we had to take this ship, leave the ground below. If Bonekin were meant to fly, we would have wings like the Ulthak. I mean, there must have been a better way. June.
It is an adventure, my friend. Sometimes you have to do scary things. That's what we're here for. And he kind of thumps the railing, if there is a railing on this ship that he and Durnan are standing beside.
Oh, don't do that.
You sound like my father. Come now. Be of good cheer, my friends. Look at the elf. The elf seems to be happy enough, although it is a little hard to tell. They are very, what is the word? Stoic. Yes.
And the elf is standing. I guess standing isn't even the right word. It would be meditating, crouching, cross-legged, but not even in contact with the ground, just a mere inches above the wood. And maybe it's a trick of the eye or a trick of the light, but you just can't help but see just her float. And her eyes are closed, and she seems to be humming something soft, something quiet. And she's been on this ship because of a similar reason to the other fever dream prone individual, where it almost seems like her paths are not hers to choose. And so she found herself destined to be on this ship through the machinations of the great gods of this world. Peace is would be all the words that she says.
She's right. Peace before the storm. Isn't that right, my other stout friend? And Juno will look over at the other dwarf in the group.
Yeah, and as June looks over and brings attention to Artur sitting on maybe a crate, sort of looking over the edge of the airship, his sort of color shifting cloak has the hood down, and almost to accentuate Siege's word there, peace. He's blowing on his panpipes, a sort of peaceful cheerful melody as they're flying towards the city of Mydakona. And he lowers his pipes and looks across. What did you say?
I just said that the elf, she said peace, and I was saying that it is the peace before the storm, you know, the quiet before the storm. It is very exciting. And June is practically bouncing on the balls of his feet, which are, they have no shoes. It's just these sort of tough, leathery soles. He is clearly very excited to get started on this quest.
You are young, Master Bonekin. Yes, it is good to channel that excitement. And, you know, life is like the seasons. There is always calm, and then the storm, and then the calm returns once more. Perhaps we will see what this city and the god Mydakona has in store for us. And he returns to blowing on his panpipes and looking across, looking out over the edge.
I fear nothing good awaits us at Mydakona. The omens have not been good.
But if you think about it this way, Nevada, at least you will be off this ship, yes? You will be back on the bones, and you will be walking upon the flesh again. That is a good thing.
Praise be to the verdant one that comes true.
Oh, praise be.
Praise be.
And Sija does not chime in with the praise be. She seems, again, sullen and calm, and maybe she's asleep and you don't even know with these elves.
You approach the city, being able to see some of the purple shapes begin to emerge out of the haze of colored distance that the dawn has been coloring the world with for the last week and a half to 2 weeks. The airship that you're on is, like many elven things, gilded with swirls of shiny copper, bronze, brass everywhere. And nearly every guideline and rope had almost a dozen flags on it that waved and snapped in the breeze as you made your way forward. An enormous bladder of air and ether sits above you, kind of in harnesses, and the boat just guides along with this massive balloon. It's steered much the way a human ship would be, from the rear at a helm that's elevated, where a dedicated driver, a pilot, and the captain would alternate. You had crew decks below, as well as places where you have been allowed to sleep. Probably one large room, maybe two, filled with hammocks. And as you begin your descent, the captain addresses all of you. This woman is an elf, and she dresses in the finery that her people are kind of known for. She looks at all of you and she says, "We are beginning our descent. You should perhaps prepare yourself. We're going to be opening fire with our light cannons." She indicates these devices that are sat along the gunnel of this ship. These are long tubes of metal, bone, that are nozzle-shaped, almost like the guns that the dwarves sometimes use, the hellhounds and the hellcats. But these things have a large crystal embedded in the back. And from a central point on board the ship, there's another crystal that is gathering the rays of dawn and is mixing with a slow ether drip from this balloon. And you know that whenever these light cannons are activated, that light that's being stored in the central crystal will be thrown out, its many facets, to make contact with the crystal in the back of each of these light cannons. And when it does so, the beam that it produces is incredibly powerful. All of you have been told to man one of these light cannons on your approach to the city of Mydakona. So if you would, please, as you begin to approach this city and see it looming out of the permadusk, please describe to me what it looks like as you accept and or make your way to one of these cannons.
Cija strides to one. It's a graceful stride, and it seems like she makes no wind, no gust, no steps, no sounds as she does so. And she's poised with it ready. She has a stern look of determination upon her face, bearing no signs of fear, guilt, anger, sadness, sorrow, confusion, or anything like that. It's almost like a blank slate.
Arthur moves with surprisingly a similar style of movement and a similar sort of grace and lightness. Certainly something you probably wouldn't expect from a dwarf, especially one from a people who usually dwell beneath the earth. He seems quite at home up here in the skies. And he likewise, he tucks his pan flute away and likewise strides over to a cannon next to the one that Cija has gone to. And he just looks out at this beautiful cityscape. Reminds him of the teeth, the open maw of some long lost Colossiah.
Not nearly as graceful as the two before her. Navara almost stumbles. She hasn't quite got used to this walking in the air thing down. And she goes up towards one of the cannons. One of the elves is still standing there, and she towers over this elf, being 7.5 feet tall herself. And she looks down at the elf and she's like, I do not understand. What am I to do with this thing?
You close your eyes. And you trust.
And that is it?
What else is there to do? To go beyond your own faith is to go against your faith.
Put your faith in Belorion. You will see that you struck true.
All right. We can do this. And she would tentatively grab it and get ready.
And June has listened to this brief discussion, sort of looking from Arthur to Cija and then back to Navara, and he would just say, or, Navara, you could just grab the thing and try to copy what others do instead of your faith against your faith is not your faith. It does not matter. We will be victorious. Do not worry. Just trust yourself, trust your instincts, and watch what other people do and copy them. Trust me, it has served me well since I left my steading. And he, like an overeager puppy clad in this ill-fitting chainmail and breeches with this warhammer and shield slung over his back, just bounds towards one of these things. He's looking at it. He's trying to like figure out how to grab the gun, and then he sees how Sija and Archer are touching it and holding it, and so he kind of braces himself against it. And he's like, I cannot wait for the songs and the stories. This is going to be amazing.
Navarra looks towards June and what he's doing, and then kind of copies him, looking at the elf and the dwarf and what they're doing as well, and steadies herself as we approach.
Ernan pulls himself together. I'm a dwarf, damn it. And I'm gonna take hold of this cannon and attempt to decipher their overactive imaginations and invention.
And as each of you moves over to these cannons, you see that they are very strange devices. Indeed, they're almost like a wand, but you can tell that they're set up in such a way that they can be used by nearly anyone. They're made so that they can be raised and lowered a little, but of course they're not without their filigree and beauty that's scrawled around the outside that the Dreyendale elves are known for. And you're just about kind of getting these things figured out as your speed begins to increase quite a bit. You look up and you see that the captain has these goggles pulled down over her face to cut against the wind that is now whipping over this deck. She looks very calm, as if this is all part of the plan. And the flags about you begin to snap so loudly that they sound like whips. And hearing anything else becomes very difficult. As you dive down further towards the city of Mydakona and begin dodging between these spires. And now that you have come in this low, you can see the city is moving. It's alive. It's breathing. And then you realize that it's not the cobbles of the streets that you're seeing undulating. It's the city's populace. The city is crammed, filled with people. But you realize that they're not people. Even from this height, you can see that limbs are bent at improper angles. Some of them walking off of impossible heights, falling to the ground and splattering everywhere. The smoke from many unattentioned fires mingles with the dawn haze, and you can smell rot. The smell of burning flesh. The city of Mydakona reeks of death. The captain starts to slow down and level out as you approach a courtyard that doesn't look quite as full. She says, "We need to clear a landing zone. All of you. On my mark." Mark. So here's what we're going to do. I need everybody to go ahead and roll for initiative, if you would.
19 for me.
Okay. Everybody's got pretty good. Oh, well, almost everybody. Okay. So we have a 22. So that is Arthur. Oh, Jason, you got it covered. Awesome. Thank you, sir. All right. So on each of your rounds, on each of your turns, I would like for you to roll 2d6 per attack action, or per attack that you're going to take on your turn using these cannons. The 2d6 is going to represent how many undead you manage to cut down with one of these beams of light from these light cannons. You have to burn through 70 zombies in order to clear enough room to make a safe landing. So, when you're ready, begin.
As we approach and we see this teeming mass of undead figures, R2 thinks to himself, if this cityscape reminded him of the open mouth of a long-dead Colossiah, then this must be the bile coming up from the depths of its guts. And he's used to such a smell, having dealt with such creatures before. And he aims carefully with the cannon and sends off two blasts of light because he's got the extra attack. Is that right, Jeremy? So I'll roll the damage twice.
Yes, sir.
So the first 2d6 was 11.
Right.
And the second 2d6 was 6. So 17 total.
All right. Excellent. Go ahead, describe what that looks like.
So as he swings it around, he's starting to clear, I think, from the corners, like on two of the edges of what sort of zone he sees that we might need to clear, to try and send some of them on the perimeter, hopefully scattering in the other direction. And these incredibly powerful beams of light just blast in, and yeah, I guess they'd send up some divots in some of the rubble, or are they only damage the actual creatures, Jeremy? Or
hey, man, that's up to you. It sounds awesome.
Yeah, I like the terrain damage feature effect there as well. So
hell yeah,
a bit more cinematic. So yeah, big chunks of the bridges and the walls and things getting cast aside as well. Some of the bodies, 17 he knocked off, so a handful of them spill over from the edge, and a couple get crushed by some of the flying rubble. And he sees that this is going to be a bit of work between us.
Yeah, and I think there's probably like a part of the building that actually collapses and like quarantines off like one whole road, access to this courtyard, kind of barring some of the rest of these things from starting to flood in to fill the void.
And as he, just one last thing, as he fires these shots and causes such destruction, he can't help but fear the worst for his master, who was in this city, Master Gabriel. And he looks as best he can at the face of each of those 17 that he takes out, hoping that he's not going to have to take out his master, or hoping that his master's been spared such a fate so far.
Right, next, Sija.
Sija will kind of just aim the cannon nonchalantly, as if some other force is guiding her hands, and lets loose upon the horde of heathens down below. And I rolled a 4 for my beam cannon strike. So I don't think it's the best of possibilities, but it'll do.
All right. Several more of these individuals are cut down mercifully, maybe, arguably. Their gnarled and twisted bodies and faces, not really howling in pain the way a living creature would, simply dying beneath this barrage of magical light. All right, June.
So as the lantern bearer of Belorion, that's a lot of bees, it moves closer towards the city. I think there's a moment where, despite his bravado and his carefree attitude, that June has this sudden, deep, intense longing to be back home in the setting. He left to do this thing to become special, and then he sees this horrible sight in front of him, and he is filled with this sickening, almost strength leeching dread. But then he focuses on grabbing this wand like beam cannon, and for some reason his eyes are drawn towards one of the bridges of Mydakona, and he remembers his father telling him that when you shape the bones, you have to make sure there's a strong foundation. And he sees that one of these bridges, with a fair amount of these undead horrors on them, has some struts that maybe should have been repaired a while back, that weren't for whatever reason. They were just overlooked. And so he aims the beam cannon down at this weakened strut and just lets loose 2 blasts of light that shear through it like a hot knife through butter, and the entire bridge collapses, taking a grand total of 16 of these undead creatures screaming and plummeting downward through the air, as June, with a little bit of sweat on his face, just lets out this loud whoop of delight, again trying to cover that moment of just panic and fear that he was feeling not long ago.
Absolutely. This bridge collapses, again, isolating a little more of this courtyard from further approach. Durnan.
Durnan's still a little weak in the stomach, but I took hold of the cannon and shot as straight and true as I could by the guidance of my Colossiah. I got 9 as I destroy just a large crater in the ground with both my shots kind of in the center of a large group of them.
Fantastic. All right. This courtyard is becoming more and more cleared of these foul versions of their former selves. And that brings us to... I lost the list. Here we go. Navara.
So Navara, uneasy with this whole flight and what she sees below, she looks around and she sees an Ulthark fly across the sunlit sky, or this dusky sky. And in that moment, she sees a ray of hope in this creature flying by. And so she does what Sija the elf had told her, and she closes her eyes and leaves it to faith. And as she shoots, she gets 10. This ray of light comes out of the cannon and smashes into this group of these creatures that was coming through one of the alleyways, and just obliterates them.
And seeing that this is proving successful, the captain begins to lower the ship slowly, trying to get you new angles, as well as hastening this drop-off, if you will. You know, the plan is going to be, once you're leveled out and there's a landing zone that's cleared, you're going to be dropped off, and they're going to regain some altitude and wait for you. So this is definitely going to be a quick situation once the area is cleared enough. All right. That brings us back to the top of the round, and Artur.
Didn't roll nearly so well this time. That's a total of 12. As Artur pivots his cannon to take out some of the to focus on one of the areas that that Navarra had just focused on as well. Yes, so that was 12. But Jeremy, quick question: can I use my Horde Breaker feat if this cannon counts as a weapon?
It definitely counts as a
weapon.
weapon.
One extra attack then as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say this is certainly a horde.
Yeah, that's the definition of horde, right? So that'll be in 17 all up.
Okay, so 5 additional?
Yeah.
Excellent, okay. That's, from my count.
And he's scanning the area where they're looking to land around here and preparing himself. Maybe even touches one of his hands on the hilt of one of his swords at his hips, anticipating the fight that they'll have to probably continue, if not straight away, then not long after their feet touch the stone.
Okay. The captain calls out, "That should be enough. Prepare yourselves. To the elevator." There's a small ring on the lowest deck of the ship. It is formed of arcanely etched circles of bone. And these operate similar to some spells that some of you have at least heard of, where people can open doors into different realms of existence and step through them. This does something similar, only repeatedly, to lower you down over 100 feet safely to the ground. And it will also pick you back up to the ship when your mission is done. The circles are only about 10 feet wide. So if one of you is a bonekin, that probably only means 2 of you are going up at once. Just keep that in mind. Okay. She directs you towards this elevator. Who's going first?
June is absolutely going first. He will remove his hands from the beam cannon as soon as he hears the captain speak, and he will again just sort of lope over this actually probably a little bit shorter than Navarre, probably 7 foot tall, just gangly young bonekin will get to this elevator, kind of pull out his warhammer and shield, kind of tuck him close just so everyone else has room, or whoever else is going down with him has room, and he is ready to go.
Have you ever seen a small child cut off an elderly person as they, get into the line at a store or into a building or something like that? That is what June just did to Sija, as she just was gliding over to the elevator and just cut right in front of her. Did June, and she makes nothing of it. No curse under her breath, just a mild pause, an exhale, and then she continues. Following after him.
And June will just say, kind of looking over his shoulder, he'll just be like, "You need to move a little faster, Elf, if you want to get a little slice of the glory, yes?"
Peace.
Before the storm.
So it sounds like the 2 of you are making one shift this elevator down by yourselves.
Yep.
All right. So you guys step in these circles, and the circles separate from one another, almost forming a stack with space between them as the glow of ether begins to fill the column kind of all around you. There's this strange sensation as you become weightless inside of this glowing blue beam. And then the world begins to stretch all around you. You feel a sinking sensation in your stomach as all of the liquids in your body kind of begin to slosh around. And then all of a sudden, you feel firm ground beneath your feet. The pulling of the world stops, comes back together, and these rings disappear, pulling this column of light away with them back towards the ship that you now realize is some 100 feet above you as you stand in the courtyard, surrounded by pustulant death.
Remember, young one, peace.
And June turns to look at you, Sija, and for a moment, his yellow eyes fill with this blue light, and you almost get the sense that there is something else watching you, and you get this impression of size and weight and age. And he just smiles and he says, "We are going to do incredible things together, Elf. Come on!" And he's going to try and find. Is there like an open doorway or an alleyway that looks clear of these undead? Some like potential safe exit from this area that he can sort of kind of move to protect while the others teleport down?
Absolutely. You're basically having to leap over like a small decorative banister that basically leads to someone's back porch. What would be the equivalent of almost like an outdoor cafe, personal cafe. And yeah, the door is wide open, and there's this big smear of blood kind of down this beautifully carved door, and it kind of continues straight onto the tiled floor and disappear deeper into the house.
Gotcha. So seeing that, June will sort of nod his head, his one-horned head, since the other horn is broken, nods his head in that direction and says to you, CJ, says, "I'm going to watch that door over there. I think it might be a safe haven for the rest of the group when they come down. Shout if you need any help." And he just kind of charges off without even waiting for your response and kind of posts up beside that door, warhammer in one hand and shield up in the other hand.
Siege's whole frame alights with an amber glow. Then it shifts to a blue glow and then shifts back to an amber, back and forth in this kind of like scintillating pattern as she glides readied as well with you.
And as the Bonekin and the elf move forward to this manor house door to secure the area a little further, all around you, you hear the echoes of these creatures responding to your arrival here. You hear this very throaty mixed with some kind of gurgle as it bounces around in this almost completely stone city. And one by one, or 2 or 3 by 3, you make trips, the rest of you, down this elevator shaft, much the same as I described before. And you all find yourselves arriving in this courtyard. You know that the Lake of Blades is not very far, perhaps 200 or 300 yards at most, but it is through densely populated city. If you would, each of you, describe something that you come across in the city of Mydakona as you make your way towards this Lake of Blades.
Down an alleyway to the left, I seen a glint. And Arcoon speaks to me with light sometimes, and I found this glint, and it was a small doll next to a broken plate. I don't know whose doll it was, but I have to take it.
And I think after this strange moment where we're all just sort of watching Durnan pick up this doll, June thinks nothing of it because they've been traveling together for a while, and he's in a somewhat similar situation, so he understands. They continue going, and we enter like this small, almost like a courtyard, essentially. And in the middle of this courtyard, there's a fountain, this beautiful fountain, and with Mydakona being a Colossiah dedicated to war and the wilds, there is this fountain is adorned with these iron statues, and one is like a hawk in flight, another is a heavily armored soldier in the middle with a pike, and then there is a rearing bear, and June stops for a moment and looks at this bear statue, and sees that it is dripping with blood, and it looks like the fountain itself, there's more blood than water inside. There's a couple of corpses, these rotting chunks of flesh and meat floating in this horrifying fountain. And June reaches into his chainmail and pulls out this little wooden medallion that is shaped like the head of an Urstag, and he just grips it tightly and nods across the courtyard, and then says to the others, "We should keep moving. There are a lot of them. This is going to be fun." And then he's going to immediately charge across the way.
So as we're going, we pass by one alleyway as well. And off at the end of it, there is a group of these creatures just huddled around and over something. You can't see what it is, but they're tearing at something, this group of them, and making that horrible throaty sound that they do. And Navarra quickly turns away from the sight and continues with her comrades straight forward.
Arthur has both of his swords in his hands as they proceed, after having pulled up the hood on his color shifting cloak, and looking between alleyways and looking at all these, looking at the fountain and the monuments and all the things that they're walking past. Something catches his eye in a more what was once maybe a greener part of the city, maybe in like a small garden area, courtyard kind of thing. There's fallen from a tree is a broken bird's nest of some kind, but a large one, like the size of if you hold your arms around in a hoop. And there's some broken eggshells that have fallen out of it, cracked on the stone floor. But something catches Arthur's eye there as well. And he takes a few strides away from the group to bend down and pick it up, sheathing one of his swords to do so. And he lingers there for a few moments as the group maybe continues on, or notices that he steps aside and slows down for him to do what he's doing and catch up. And he sheathes his other sword and reaches in to his pack and pulls out something of his own. And he holds these two items up as he walks back towards the group. The one that he'd pulled out from his pack is a carved tusk in the shape of a tornado. And the one in his other hand that he picked up from beside the nest is almost identical, but made from stone. And it's broken in half. It's only half of the identical thing. This was the sending stone of my master. I fear for his fate. He pockets them both and draws both of his swords and strides forward with renewed purpose.
There's a section of cobbleway, of stonework, of mosaics that we walk across on the ground that are all scattered, destroyed, misplaced, and etc. As Sija walks by them, she pauses. She looks down at her feet and sees the destruction and disorderliness of it all. She leans over, down, picks up one of the stones and drags it back into place. And does it yet again and again, and just realigns and fixes a good maybe 5 by 5 foot area of road. As it should be, she would mumble. As it should be.
Priorities, Sija. We are running. Priorities. And June is going to continue moving forward.
Peace.
Before the storm.
You all make your way these several hundred yards, working your way through houses and businesses, places that used to be centers for maybe educating or trade. And eventually you find yourself in the heart of this city, the Lake of Blades. This lake is still frozen from the cold of winter and from the last 100 or so days of night that this dusk is now bringing you out of. The entirety of the lake is embedded through the ice currently with swords, knives, even other weapons, maces, flails, bits of armor, shields. Many of them seeming to have been purposefully driven into the ground in this space. These swords and weapons are larger than any living sentient race could ever hope to wield. So there is no doubt that these weapons once graced the hands of your gods. Banners and flags hang from various weapons. People having brought their prayers here when the lake was frozen, or even by boat, to hang their prayers upon the weapons of their gods so that they might be heard. Across the way from you, tilted at an awkward angle and half frozen in the lake as well, is the face of Mydakona. It is a facsimile. It is a mask that has been carved from the rock that rises up on the other side of this lake. But you know that just beyond it, in the shrine itself, that this statue, if you will, had once decorated, inside that shrine are the remains of Mydakona, the god of the wilds and of war. And you are about to set foot in such a place. If you would please describe your journey across the ice.
Where other people's footfalls might cause blemishes, cracks, small dents in the ice, Sija does not even begin to tamper or mar this sacred place with her footfalls, and she will glide a few inches off the ground above the ice. She is arms spread in glorious prayer and witnessing such a huge and monumental place. She is singing loud. It's quite loud, actually, for all of you hearing it. And through her songs, she is praising the glory and the abilities and the fineness and the royalty of these of Mydakona and in general all of the Colossiah. And she just worships them in all their glory.
And as Sija starts to sing, Navara, much more graceful now that she's down on the ground, pulls out this long, almost staff-like, would have been staff for a normal-sized humanoid. It's the staff of bone, and it's got these lines, very colorful lines carved into it. And it's topped with a skull. And dangling from the skull is a bunch of rocks and beads and stones. And she takes this instrument and she starts to twirl it. And the sound that comes from it is like it was raining. And she starts to walk with Sija and accompanying the singing that Sija is doing with this instrument. And she punctuates it every once in a while with a rattle as she shakes it, and then turns it over and starts the rainfall again.
Connor, is the song that Sija is singing, is that being sung in Elven?
Yes. Elvish or Dreyandil or whatever the language is of her people. Yes.
Perhaps surprising to her then, once Navara joins in and sort of builds upon the song with her instrument. Arthur is making his way between the blades, inspecting the prayers that have been placed there, vainly hoping to see some more sign of his master, who is either lost or dead somewhere in this city. And he knows that around the Lake of Blades was where his destination would be. He, without even realizing it at first, joins in the song of prayer, singing alongside Sija in Elven alike.
Durnan sees the remains of some sort of maybe paper lantern, and the ribbon attaching with the prayer to the sword is similar to the ribbon around the Dollhound's neck. I reach into my inner pocket and I pull out a piece of parchment myself. And I walk over to the lantern, and I almost picture a stiff breeze blowing between these swords across the lake. And as I go to strike my tinderbox, it wants to blow out, but the flame is weak, but it sputters and it catches, and I'm able to light my prayers on fire inside the lantern. Arcoon, I will keep following these messages.
And walk as carefully as I can across the water.
And June, surprisingly enough, even though he was probably one of the first people to reach kind of the shores of the Lake of Blades, is lagging a bit behind the group. He's staring at these massive swords and all the prayers sort of fluttering on them, sort of attached to them, fluttering in the wind. And he sees this edifice before him, this image of Mydakona, and he reaches into a little pouch hanging from his belt, and he pulls out what looks like a broken off tine from some sort of antler. It's like this copper or bronze color. And he steps onto the ice, shivering as his bare soles come into contact with the frozen lake. And for a moment, he glances down past the tine to his own reflection. And in his reflection, he does not see himself. He does not see this 7-foot-tall bonekin lad with this shoulder-length dark hair. Instead, he sees this giant gray-furred bear with these massive branching horns, but one of the tines on the antlers, rather, is missing. And June is going to take a moment and just quietly say, "Well, you sent me here. You sent me on this quest. You sent me to help Mydakona. Help me find the mask of Shiala-Gior." And then he is going to hold up the tine, and it starts to glow with this faint blue light. And he's actually going to cast Locate Object to see if he can find the mask. I know he hasn't seen it, probably. I don't know if we've been given a description of it, or if just in general, he'll look for masks within 1,000 feet of him as he continues walking out onto the lake.
Your influence radiates out away from you, kind of making a dull, barely audible kind of noise as it goes out over the ice, and you can feel the ground beneath you shake ever so slightly. And you see your magic penetrate the statue and the rock ahead of you. And you get a feeling, a tug, as some of those magical waves kind of come back at you faster than some of the others. And you realize that there is something in there that is almost masked, but not quite. But it's the only reading you get.
And June will again glance down into the ice to see if there's any sort of indication from this spirit of nature, this spirit of the wilds that he has come into contact with. But all he sees is his own reflection holding the glowing tine broken off from these antlers. And he is going to sort of grit his teeth, square his shoulders, and he's going to continue walking still with the tine in hand. He's going to concentrate on the spell for the full 10 minutes to see if he can get a clearer reading. He feels the tugging, but he wants to see if he can get something a little more concrete as he lags a little behind his companions.
As you approach this statuesque face, this overgrown, broken depiction of Mydakona and the shrine that you know lies behind it, you pass the long shoreline on your right that has rows and rows of these prayer banners hung almost like laundry out to dry. This breeze that Dernan described kicks them up occasionally, and they dance and throw shapes, tricks of the eye that catch your attention occasionally. As you approach, June, you don't ever get a stronger hint of a mask, but you still feel this tug, and it's certainly coming from the shrine. And the closer you get, the less doubt that you have. And again, it's as if it were a mask, but not entirely. There's something amiss, something that you cannot put your finger on. Is there anything that you would like to do before you enter the shrine of Mydakona?
Definitely. I think sensing that something may potentially be wrong, June will will release the concentration on this spell, tucking the broken antler tine back into his pouch and bounding up to his companions, probably slipping a little in the ice. And he'll just say, we need to be wary. I think this will be a little harder than we were expecting. But you know what they say, nothing in life worth doing is easy. And I definitely think that is the case here. But just understand that something feels, and he's reaching for the word, something feels wrong. Well, more so than corpses walking around and all of that. Just be careful, I guess. But don't worry, you have Jolly June here to protect you. But just, watch my back, yeah?
Fine fighter, I'm sure you are, as well, Jolly June.
You're damned right I am.
I'm thankful to have you. We're all thankful to have you at our backs. I'm sure songs will be sung of your bravery after today.
All of our bravery, I'm sure. I mean, it will probably be the song of Jolly June and his companions, but you are the companions. I mean, no good song exists without companions.
This is true. And no good song can be written without a suitable bard to do so, he says with a look to Navarra.
Navarra would, at that point, look back to Artis and say, "May Mydakona bless you." And she'd actually give you a bardic inspiration die, a D8 for the next 10 minutes.
Artis' face would grow more solemn once more, and his thoughts returning to what Jun was speaking of the Walking Dead, an enemy that Artu knows more than he would like to, having fought them in the past in one capacity or another with his master Gabriel. And he draws once more one of the blades at his waist, a fine curved blade with flames worked into the handle and along the blade. And he gets down to one knee, places the sword in the ice, and his hands atop the pommel. As he says, as he prays to Arzakun and Akun, both for sight and wisdom here. And what he's doing mechanically is burning a level 1 spell slot to use his primeval awareness ranger feature to basically sense whether there's any undead present within 1 mile. Doesn't reveal the creature's location or number, just whether they're present.
Yes. Overwhelmingly, yes.
Damn. Yeah. Songs being sung of great deeds are one thing, he says as he stands back to his feet and addresses June and the wider group. But the deeds must be done first. There's no time to be flippant. We don't know what's inside. We must prepare for the worst.
But we can hope for the best, yes? Maybe. You never know. But you're right. We need to we need to be careful, obviously.
I can hope that you will do your best, and each of us the same, that we may live yet to see the dawn complete.
A fresh batch of gurgling howls echoes off of an exposed street that passes near this lake. You all duck behind outcroppings of rock or blades as you hear this small mob pass. You hear its echoes move back the direction that you had come from before you're able to turn your attention back towards the shrine, which has a low, hollow whistle that greets you from its yawning maw. That's where we're going to take our break. So just before we find out what's inside, we're going to take 5 to 10 minutes, go to the bathroom, refill your drinks, smoke them if you got them, kiss your spouse, whatever. Thank you, everybody who may be tuning in this evening. We have a few people that have popped in chat. Hello to Dave from Mornblade Gaming, Steve over at 3D6, if I'm not mistaken, and then Josh. Forgive me, Josh, I do not know the name of your channel off the top of my head. Drop it in the chat, I'll mention it. Thank you, everybody, to who may be watching. Thank you, everybody, thus far. You guys are you guys are doing such a good job with this setting. I'm super duper pleased. The setting is really, really raw. So I wasn't exactly certain how this was going to go, and you guys are blowing me away. So thank you very much. Josh's channel is Strength Mod, STR Mod. So check them out. So yeah, 5-10 minutes. Be right back, and we'll finish this up. All right. I am back. Jason, you're next on the list.
Next on the list for what, DM?
Right after Baron. No, kidding.
As long as I'm not first.
Oh, to die. Got
Thank you for the
You guys are doing
clarification, Barrett.
yeah.
I'm very, very pleased and very excited with what you guys are doing with this.
Hey, so weird question. The live button is still on the screen. Is that cool?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I stay live during my breaks because I'm not fancy enough to use like the
Okay,
OBS.
I was just curious. I was just like, oh man.
Nope. I'm always live. People know me that I say all kinds of weird shit and nobody seems to care. So.
I'm always live.
I'm always live.
I haven't
always
tried
on.
I haven't tried dead yet, so
I don't recommend it.
I'm pretty sure the opposite of live is off live. Baron, come on.
double ungood.
And double not great.
Unlife.
I mean, we can ask all these fine folk what unlife is like, as we blast them to smithereens with giant spotlights of doom.
It's kind of one of those weird situations where unlife and undeath kind of mean the same thing.
Yeah, basically.
Like flammable and inflammable? Wait a second. How can they both mean the same thing? We'll just give everybody a minute or two to get back before we get this rolling again.
Man, I'm loving this so far.
Dude, yeah.
So good.
I'm glad. You guys are, like I said, you guys are killing it. People in the chat are saying the same thing.
Having a blast. This is
I was
amazing.
really, really worried about that first encounter being super meta, like a mini game. But like, I like that kind of stuff, so I was like, it'll be fun. Be like a carnival.
Little shooting gallery. Shooting
Right.
gallery.
Yeah.
Make us
You all
feel
want teddy
powerful
bears.
before we get murdered.
Exactly.
That was cool. It was a lot of fun, something a bit different, and definitely was like straight into it.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the impact of how overrun the city is, and
Good. Excellent. Good to hear that. Okay. Connor, if you're there, let us know whenever you get back. Oh, you said back, like way early. Sorry.
And I also said things. Oh my goodness.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I was talking.
I don't know if I was back yet.
I made the joke about asking whether we should ask the zombies.
He talked to you.
Oh, dude, I am so sorry.
To be honest with you, it wasn't a very good joke, so I don't blame you for not remembering.
I was just going to say that.
Birds of a feather flock together.
a dagger to the heart.
That fucking Vorpal sword's deadly.
Connor, June can't kill Sija for no reason, so I have to murder you in other ways. No, I'm just kidding.
So I've been noticing a trend. Whenever I play in a game with you, Jason, I always end up getting personally attacked.
I mean, it's only because secretly I'm madly in love with you, Connor, and just envious of everything you do. So
sorry. The humorous part about it.
This is revealed now. I'm sorry. Sorry, Jeremy. Don't mean to sidetrack us
Next
here.
time on Mori.
So the funny part is, it's not always just you that is personally attacking me. It's just like when you're here, other people also just personally attack me as well. It's just like, well,
he just
If it
chums
makes
the
you
water.
feel any better, I feel obligated to personally attack Jason every
It's
time I'm
true.
around him.
It's true.
okay.
My love
So
for you just infects everyone else. Connor, and that's why they do that.
His paladin aura of infuriation.
I love that. The aura of infuriation.
So basically, we're playing a bunch of darts, right? Except we are the dartboards.
Basically.
I've seen that YouTube video.
Okay. So.
Love me, Connor.
You guys ready to get
All
back
right,
into this?
segue into this, please. Yeah.
Yes. Let's. Okay. You stand at the gaping maw of the shrine of Mydakona. You had just heard a group of these blasphemous undead creatures streak by, and now you face meeting a god. Certainly not the first time that it's happened for most of you, probably. But I doubt that any of you have met Mydakona before this moment. You walk into this cavern, and surprisingly, you can see as the streaks of dawn shine through the partially collapsed portion of the cave off to one side. This chamber is dominated by a skull that is easily 10 to 15 feet in diameter. The remainder of this cave is covered in the skulls of those who have had the honor to be buried here. In the presence of the skull of Mydakona, the god of the wilds and of war, more blades have been thrust into the ground here. And every wall surface that you can see, the columns that support this cavern, and beginning to even stretch away from the walls and columns littering the floor, are piles and piles of skulls. Human, dwarven, bonekin, elven. It does not seem to matter. But each of these individuals would have chosen this resting place, you know. That this was not a punishment. That this was a gift. What is the moment like? What does this feel like? What are we seeing as the five of you step into this chamber?
We feel serenity from Sija. She's calm, but she is yet powerful, and she lets everyone in the room know it, whether they want to or not, just by how she acts, how she's standing, her posture, and the luminescence that sparks from her fingers and her arms and her hair, and how it flows without any wind.
The total opposite of Sija. June is, although he has his warhammer out and his shield out, he is rigid. His movements are a little clumsy. And since he is trying to sort of keep his face turned away from his companions, they don't see this intense grimace. Although he knows it is an honor to have your remains laid in such close proximity to a Colossiah, or even in a Colossiah shrine. Being in the presence of so much death, again, that strength leeching fear fills him, and somehow he finds himself remembering those times when, after he left the steading, when he left his home, that he couldn't afford enough. He couldn't afford enough food for the night, or he couldn't find shelter for the night. Those moments where this supposed grand adventure that he has embarked on by choice was not so grand, and when the harsh realities of life, and in this case death, were shoved in his face. And this is definitely one of those moments. His hands are slippery on the haft of his warhammer and on the grip of his shield as he slowly moves through the area, trying not to disturb any of the skulls, which from the looks of this image is pretty impossible.
Navarra is struck with a deep sense of reverence as she sees the skull of one of the gods. And almost in that second too, though, there passes this look of almost sheer terror as she realizes that this is the same scene that she's been envisioning the past night for all those weeks. The dream that she's had that's made her woken up shaking. And as this knowledge comes to her, she starts to tremble a little bit. And to mask that, she starts a chant. It starts low and guttural, and she steps up to Sija and just continues this low murmuring chant and tries to grab some strength from Sija, who's standing there all powerful.
Remember, be at peace. Still your mind, still your body, and the universe shall be still with you.
And Navarra would look down to Sija, and without breaking her chant, she would nod and continue.
Burning, thinking back to the lantern that was burning outside and how the flame has probably all been extinguished and the ashes flowing away in the wind. It takes me back over the edge horizon, below, in the dark, where you can't even see your hand in front of your face. There is no hope down there. Even in death here, there is satisfaction, recognition, a light. The symbol that some of the clerics of my order keep, like my master and his before him, are a lantern. For even if we see in the dark, we are within it, and cannot keep the demons away. And there are times they bury themselves in our flesh. And it is but the lantern that keeps them at bay. This is a holy place, far from what my people are used to. I am calm. My lantern does not need to be lit. Maybe not yet.
For Artu, it's a profound reverence, seeing as they entered this place, the human and elf and dwarf and bone kitten-sized skulls, and then rounding the corner or looking up and seeing this tremendous skull of Mydakona himself, Artu's most favored god, being god of the wilds, where Artu has spent the majority of his life exploring and adventuring and bounty hunting with his master Gabriel. And so he just stands in reverence of this physical piece of Mydakona himself. The armor that he wears is constructed of chips, bone chips from the Colossiahs' very bones. He's not too sure which Colossiah or if it's several, and that's a special thing in itself. But seeing the intact, more or less, skull of Mydakona, silence just falls over him and just a complete profound reverence. as he very slowly makes his way across the floor between the skulls with a sort of slow grace, sword in each hand.
And though the floor is crowded with these skulls, passage across the floor is not difficult until you get close to the skull of Mydakona itself. There, every open inch of ground has been covered in multiple layers of skulls, those wanting to be closest to this god. As you're picking your way across this opening, this cavernous space, two of you, Durnan and Sija, something out of the corner of your eye kind of catches your attention. At first, it seems to be just another skull, but no, that's not quite right. You're kind of peering into this dim, shadowy light that is somewhat being ruined by these streaks of dawn. It's rounder and a slightly different color than these skulls, and what caught your eye was a faint, fading blue glow. A telltale sign of ether.
Ah. Patience begets its own rewards, and peace yet still. Look there yonder. It flickers, it glows. See it not amongst the skulls, but by itself, in the center. 'Tis ether. She points it out to everybody.
Where this object lies, there is a clear enough path that can be picked to it. Does anybody wish to approach?
Arthur would, without hesitation.
And June would follow him.
From where the two of you are kind of in this maze, you both kind of pick an angle and start working towards this. Sorry, go ahead. No? Okay. The two of you start working your way towards this object. And when you get close enough, you see that it is about the size and shape of one of these skulls, but it is made of metal. It is not, in fact, a head, but a mask. And then you get closer still and realize, no, this is not a mask. This is what you were sent to find. The mask of Shiaya Jalor. And in fact, it is not a mask. It is the head of a reborn. The reborn are not a race that is created or made the same as the others in Momentum. Some of you may or may not exactly know what a reborn is. But some of you would likely know that the elves make the reborn. Those that are concerned with what happens after one becomes breathless and suffers their own ether death. And in an effort, blasphemously, most consider, to avoid becoming breathless, they build these husks, these constructs, for their soul to embody once their body has disappeared. However, the process wipes their memory clean, and they are thus reborn. So as the two of you have approached and seen this, what's happening?
I imagine that June probably is not especially familiar with the Reborn, being that he left his steading fairly recently. He's probably heard stories about elves, but not about these particular variants of elves. So he's a little disturbed because this doesn't seem natural. This doesn't look like something of the flesh and the bones, and so he hefts his hammer and will sort of move a little in front of Arthur, sort of using his body as a shield for the dwarf, and he will just essentially hold an attack action for if this creature displays any sort of hostility towards him or his companions.
And just to clarify, it is only the head.
Oh, just the head, so we don't see the body.
Correct.
Or, okay, gotcha. Yeah, he'll still go ahead and do that. Just a little in this place of so many skulls, seeing this strange thing is unsettling him, so he'll still go ahead and do what he was originally going to do.
Perfect.
Arthur would slow in his steps a little bit as this catches his eye, but then read as he steps towards it, and there's no room for caution in a life lived to the fullest, is there? So he bends down to pick it up. I think he would recognize it for what it is, at least mostly, and he would pick it up to inspect it.
You reach down and move a few skulls out of the way so that you can actually get a hand on this. And you pick it up and it's heavy. The weight of it surprises you. It's filigreed and definitely designed with beauty in mind. And you can see through the openings, the webbing that forms what you guess were this thing's eyes, that it appears to be hollow, at least some depth beyond the mask. But this is at least 3 to 4 times heavier than a human skull. Probably even a dwarven skull. This is the metal work on this is impeccable. And the glow that you were seeing from the inside has completely faded now, almost coming out of the openings of this thing as if dry ice smoke falling to the ground. Just as you are kind of hefting this and turning it over in your hand, inspecting it, a shadow passes over the mask in your hand. And you hear a something blocks the dawn light streaking in from the opening in the cavern and disturbs the rubble. Do any of you have dark vision?
Yes, 60 feet.
The 2 dwarves, okay. Everyone else is having difficulty making out what it is that's blocking the light.
If something were to start blocking the light, I think that would be the moment Durnan lights a lantern.
Okay. So instead of looking, Durnan, you busy yourself trying to get this lantern lit. So the only person who manages to actually spot what this is you, Arthur. Arthur, if you would roll a nature check for me.
That is a 10.
A 10. Okay. You know that this is some form of bird, and it is incredibly big. It's filling the gap of this broken ceiling. As it ducks down inside this opening, it looks directly at you. And you see this crest of feathers kind of on the back of its head kind of stand up. It lowers its head and kind of makes like a trembling motion with its neck and face in your direction. It opens its mouth, and you all smell decay creep into the room. But this thing does not make a sound. All of you, if you would, please roll initiative.
To your weapons!
Okay. All right. Get those all sorted. It looks like so far Arthur is probably going to be our dude again. Okay. That makes good sense. Arthur, you're the only one who saw what this thing was. The rest of you just saw the light cut off by some kind of large form. So, Arthur, it's your turn.
So this thing's on the ground over sort of blocking the doorway, or it's up above?
So there's a second opening where the light was kind of streaming in. It was a portion of this cavern that had collapsed. And this thing just basically plugged that opening. It's probably 20 or 30 feet off to what would be kind of your right. And there's kind of a small pile of rubble that leads up to the collapsed opening. And it's kind of splayed out on top of the skulls that were present.
Right. Okay. Arthur would tuck the mask into his pack and draw his second sword again, and just race over towards this thing. So he's got 25 feet movement, and it sounds like there'll be some difficult terrain as I approach this thing. Is that right?
Yes. So effectively, you can choose to take the speed loss because of the difficult terrain, or if you are not caring where you're stepping, then you can make your full movement, but you will take a small amount of damage.
Yeah, he would definitely do that. Throw caution to the wind.
Okay.
And risk the damage, yeah, to get there.
So you would have had. All right. Let's see. Okay, you're going to take 4 points of basically piercing and bludgeoning damage as you're just crushing these skulls under your boot falls. And there's horns and teeth and jagged bits of bone that are just kind of cutting your shins and feet as you're trudging through.
Yeah, it's probably the most trudge-like that anyone here has seen him move, as he sort of pushes through and has to sacrifice some of his sort of inherited elven grace, as it were, from training under his elven master, to trudge through and cut his legs up a bit to get through. And but as he gets through past the rubble, so I'm adjacent to it now. Is that right? I can attack it this turn.
Correct. Yes.
Excellent. And the sword forms that he's trained and drilled with so many times over the years flowing through his mind which one's the most appropriate for this situation. This enemy has the higher ground. So as he charges up, he is in the form of river flows up the mountain and turns into peeling bark, and then threading the needle as he sort of turns and flows and swings his blades around, flashing in one a simple sturdy blade with a slender blade, as he makes 2 attacks with his attack action. Well, that's not so good. So that's an 8 and an 18.
8 will not come close as this thing pulls its foot back before you're able to get to it. However, the 18 will collide kind of right where its breast becomes its neck.
And that's so his slashing blade strikes it there for 11 damage on the neck, 11 slashing damage. And then
you bury your blade kind of amongst these feathers, and immediately you can see the dark stain, as you cannot see the color. You see the dark stain of blood begin to pour out of these feathers.
Yeah, the spray, some of it sprays on his cheek as he pays no heed to it and continues flowing around, the form dancing in the moonlight as he spins around and thrusts for his bonus action. He's actually going to cast Ensnaring Strike. Actually, sorry, that's the bonus action to cast it, and that means it's my next attack. So I'll just do a standard offhand attack, I think, because I did it in the wrong order. That'll be a 14.
A 14 is the magic number, so you hit.
Excellent. So that's with his offhand piercing. 6 piercing. As he spins around with his offhand straight slender blade and thrusts it into the wing of this thing, maybe.
It recoils,
and there's a feather skewered on the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of straight through the middle. I used to know what the name of that was, but the veining that kind of runs down the length of the feather. It makes a motion like it wants to respond with some kind of call or hiss at you as it opens its mouth wider and kind of shakes its head again, almost in this like ruffle that expands all of these feathers like a mane around its face, but no sound comes out except for the rattle of its feathers. It looks at you with these black orbs of eyes, and it opens its almost alligator-like jaws. Again, the reek of death and decay hitting you very strongly. As it reaches up and tries to snap its jaws on you, Archer. Archer, I've got your AC here. Okay. 17 is going to hit you.
I want to remind Archer that he's got that bardic die that he could use as well.
Can he use it on his AC?
That against the hit, can I?
Yeah, because I have College of Valor.
Oh, excellent. Nice.
Yeah, you can use your reaction to roll it to add to your AC if you wanted to.
I will absolutely do that now, if I may.
Absolutely.
D8? Oh, that's an 8.
All right. So what does it look like? Yeah, what does it look like as this thing tries to snap its jaws around you, and this bardic inspiration is what makes the difference?
As he's going toe-to-toe with this thing, flowing through the forms, landing a couple of strikes, he gets a bit ambitious and is going into a more aggressive form, but then out of at the corner of his eye, he catches Navarra and remembers the words that she said to him before, and so too do the words of his master flow through his head. Live to fight another day, and so he turns that form instead into gathering clouds, a more defensive form, and turns aside the beak of this thing.
It slams into the ground, causing skulls to almost splash everywhere away from it. This kind of hollow clunking noise as they slam against one another. And he comes back up with probably 5 to 6 skulls in his mouth. And he then just turns his beak straight upwards, and you hear each of these skulls just cascade down the throat of this enormous creature. June.
So initially, upon seeing this horrifying looking thing, which in a way, because it's so close, is even scarier than the undead, and then seeing it gulp down these skulls that have been placed here in this sacred shrine, June again feels that terror, and for a moment he starts to step back, but then he sees Artur, valiantly attacking this thing, and he remembers why he left the steading, and he charges forward. So 30 feet forward, not moving carefully, Jeremy. So I'll take that damage, whatever you got to dish out as far as that goes.
Hey, oof. So you're actually going to take 8 points of piercing and bludgeoning as you trunch through.
Gotcha. And I imagine with his bare feet, June's soles are getting pretty cut up, but he doesn't feel the pain. The soles of his feet are pretty toughened from the long journeys that he's undergone in the past, and he runs forward toward this thing, and he swings with his warhammer for a first attack with an 11, which I'm betting misses. Is that correct?
It will. Likely because of only the partial kind of dim light that you're able to get at the moment, as this thing's body blocks most of the light.
Gotcha. So that first swing, he sort of is just a simple swing from right to left, trying to knock it across sort of its chest area, and he goes wide, and he staggers back, and then he takes a moment, gathers himself, and then he swings back, and he is going to roll a natural 20 on that, and he's also going to pump some smite into this as well. So what I imagine is he cracks it across the chest, and as he does, there is this loud roar, like the roar of a bear or grizzly, and his eyes flash with this blue light as this spectral image of Veld, this spirit of the wilds that blessed June with these abilities he did not have before, just slams a spectral paw across the creature's chest for a whopping total of, let's see here, because I'm assuming we're doubling the dice, or how do you handle crits? It's been a little bit.
So the way that I handle crits is you roll up all of your damage, modifiers, dice, everything, and then you add that to the maximum potential that you could get from those same dice and modifiers.
Holy crap. Okay, so
yes.
Roll the dice and then add that to max damage, basically, correct?
Yes, correct. Including modifiers twice and everything.
Roger that. All right, so wow, this is gonna be a lot. So let's see. Ooh, that's not great. All right. D8 plus. Sorry, this is gonna take a little second. Let's see. 8. 9. Okay. Modifiers 8.
So while he is doing that, Sija, why don't you go ahead and take your turn?
Probably a good idea.
Sija advances to be approximately in the middle of everybody, moving as little as possible through the jagged terrain, but would she rather, just encompass everyone in her aura as she conjures this blue and amber light around her and expels it from her as she again makes a great chorus of singing, of this ode or a choir almost by her. Even though it's only one voice box, it sounds like a dozen voices. She's casting bless upon everybody that she can get in range of a blessing. Which a bless is, if I'm really smart, I can read 30 feet, and I can pick only 3 people. So I have to pick one person out to not get it, and that'll probably be the silly looking paladin who just got a crit.
Sounds appropriate.
June's not going to get blessed. Yeah.
And is there any visual? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. So this blue and yellow light actually envelops everybody else too, and they kind of get the same kind of glowing effect that she does, although it's much more minute. So you can add a D4 whenever you make an attack roll or a saving throw, and add that D4 to your roll for the next minute as I concentrate.
Yes. Bless is very, very sexy. Okay. So as this goes out amongst most of your group, that brings us to, thank you, Dernan.
Being enveloped in the blue light from Sija, I feel comfort, though maybe not from my particular Colossiah preference, but just the presence of the gods in all their many forms.
For this woman, despite her being an elf, seems to portray qualities of a lantern.
I look to the creature.
What say you, beast? What brings you to these parts of gods and the fallen comrades that served them?
And I'm going to cast Bane on him.
D4 to attacks and saves, I think. I think it's like bless almost exactly, but reversed.
Yeah, it rolls D4 and subtracts it.
Attacks and saves?
Yep, but you need to make a charisma saving throw.
Ah, okay. Charisma, what is the DC?
Oh. 14.
Not going to matter. Oh, no, wait. No, he actually got a 15. So this thing kind of looks at you puzzled as you're speaking, does the same kind of shake of its head, ruffling these giant feathers all around it. And you see just blankness reflecting back at you at these black orbs of eyes. Doesn't seem to heed what you've said.
And then you said I can make a cantrip as well if one of them was a bonus action.
Yes. Yeah, in my game, as long as you have
Bane's an action. Never mind. I was thinking of Shield of Faith. Never mind.
But yes, typically you can cast an action and a bonus action spell in the same round with me, and one of them does not have to be a cantrip.
Okay. But yeah.
In addition, if you have potions of healing, I'm okay with those being drunk as a bonus action.
Right.
Okay, so you cast Bane. Was there anything else?
Yes. I'm also going to cast Magic Weapon as a bonus action.
Okay, on your own?
Or not? I said Magic Weapon. Yes. So, kind of like harnessing the light that Sija is emanating. There is like I don't want to say it's like a crystal, maybe like a filament that is in like the head of my hammer. Maybe something that like at some point would like hold a sacred flame, kind of in like a torchlight essence. Perhaps something that is used below ground. And yeah, so there's kind of like this dull shimmer coming from this filament at the head of my hammer.
Awesome. Okay. That brings us to Nivara.
So Navara continues her chant, and as she notices this creature that her party members are fighting, her chant gets a little louder, and she starts to shake her rain stick back and forth so that the beads at the top start making this clacking noise. And that's what everybody else hears. But this creature, it hears something different. It hears this horrendous shriek just kind of pierce into its brain, and it needs to make a wisdom saving throw, DC 14. And I'm casting this as a 3rd level spell, so it's Dissonant Whispers.
Okay. On its wisdom save, it only managed a 9.
Okay, so it is going to take full damage, and it must immediately use its reaction to move as far as its speed allows away from me. So 6, 12. So he'll take 15 points of psychic damage.
And you said that's immediate or on his turn?
No, he has to take an immediate reaction to fly.
Oh, excellent. Okay. So yeah, he kind of recoils from this noise that you make in his direction. Again, kind of almost shaking its head in a different way this time, almost trying to like shrink its neck back up against its body. And it takes a couple of steps backwards up this kind of mountain of rubble, almost with like practiced movement. It just backs itself out of this hole that's almost exactly the same size as this. And you hear this woof, 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 as it flies away. There's wind buffeted through this opening from its wings as it takes off.
Would that provoke op attacks from Artur and June?
I think because it has to take its reaction in order to do so, instead of something actually physically moving it, I think that does qualify those of you who are engaged with it to attack it.
Okay. I will go ahead and roll an attack. And that will definitely hit with a 22.
Indeed, it will.
And that is 9 points of bludgeoning damage. As this thing starts to take off, I imagine June just sort of swings his hammer up and kind of clips at one of its legs.
And it almost falls off balance, kind of colliding with a part of the the entrance, and several skulls become dislodged and kind of make that almost glockenspiel kind of noise as they're bouncing off one another, cascading to the floor. There was someone else that was also engaged.
Yeah, I think Artur.
Yeah.
Artur. Yep.
Artur, yeah. Am I using the attack action? Basically, I'm trying to see if I roll 1 or 2 because I've got the extra attack feature.
No, you would roll 1 because you're using an opportunity attack, which uses your reaction instead of your
just
action.
a single die. Cool.
Correct.
So that's only a 13 to hit.
Okay, that's going to actually glance off of his feathers, and it will miss.
Does he get the bless on a reaction, or does he?
Oh, he would. Because it's to all of his attacks. It is still an attack. It's just a reactionary attack.
Yeah, that took the bless into account, unfortunately. Yeah.
Oh, did it? No. Well. Okay. So, yeah, you just kind of misjudge how quickly this thing is moving away, and as you strike out, you cut a few feathers, but nothing more. That was Nivara. We are now back to Artur.
As a bonus action, I would
Yes.
like to yell out to June, "May Mydakona guide your strike," and I'm giving him a bardic die.
Thank you. Wait, is that I'm sorry, is that a D6 or a D8?
It's a D8.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. So that brings us to Archer.
Yeah, swinging and missing as this thing takes off. This huge thing takes off. Probably the wind downdraft from its wings as it beats them and takes off, blowing down against everyone, and Archer's beard and his cloak sort of flapping wildly in this breeze, almost like it's conjuring up the chill wind that we encountered on the Lake of Blades outside, stirring up the musty stench that's in here. And shouting in frustration as his swing misses it as it takes off. He calls out, Irashara Belasao, which is Irashara, bless me, as he casts Zephyr Strike upon, which is his concentration for 1 minute. He moves like the wind and doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. And there's an extra little feature I can do next time I try and make an attack. But it's up in the air at the moment, is that right?
Yes, it is outside of the cavern and up into the sky.
Oh, okay. So what he would probably do then is, if he could manage it, is he near the giant skull of Mydakona? Or
You're probably about
away, isn't it?
Yeah, you're probably about halfway between this side of the giant skull and the bottom of the pile of rubble from this collapse.
Right. I think, anticipating this thing coming back in and going at us again, he'll make his way to try and climb up atop the skull, try and launch onto it when it comes back in.
Okay, so you're falling back to the skull of Mydakona?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And once again, not being safe or slow?
Yeah, correct. I don't think he would, even though the things...
That's only another 4. He has only another 4 points. So apparently you are graceful and light on your feet enough to to avoid the worst of it.
Whew.
Okay. So you move over to the skull of Mydakona. And how tall are you, Archer? Roughly?
I guess it'd be about 5 feet.
It'd be pretty tall for a dwarf.
Okay. Let's say 4.
I mean, okay. So yeah, I mean, that's so this thing is probably twice your height, maybe a little more. You certainly have enough things that you could grab a hold of, such as the teeth, the eye sockets, and whatnot, to be able to climb on top of it. But this thing is very, very big, especially when you're standing directly next to it. Okay.
He's going to need a big launching pad to try and get onto the back of this thing. So,
like I said, you can climb, but it certainly will be a climb.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, excellent. All right, that brings us to the beastie. Okay. It seems as though this creature is flying past this opening once, as you hear this kind of as it sails past and darkens the sky outside for a moment. And then it passes a second time. Each time there's powerful winds that kind of enter the cave and sweep through. You then hear the sound again. It settles onto this pile with its massive frame. It stays outside the opening and lowers its head to look inside at each of you, glaring in the direction of Navara last. And then begins to walk into the space a little more cautiously than it had before. Now, this thing has quite a bit of movement when in flight, which is how it was able to make several passes and still land. However, its feet are not designed for walking on the ground. So once it has entered the cave, it can't go very far. And the nearest one to the entrance of the cave is June. So June, this thing reaches out for you. First with one talon, and then with the second as it shifts its weight. The first one missing horribly, scratching along the bone-covered column that's next to you, knocking several of the skulls flying and looking like it was almost threatening to take the entire column down itself. The second, however, manages to just bypass your armor, grabs a hold with these razor-sharp talons.
Actually, hang on. I'm sorry, real quick.
Yes.
So I used my reaction. Was that the previous turn when the creature flew up? Is that correct?
It would have, yes.
Okay, so then what I'll go ahead and do is Well,
actually, no, because you haven't had another turn yet.
You're right. Okay.
And that's when it renews.
That makes sense. Perfect. Go ahead.
Okay. So this talon grabs a hold of you. First, it's going to be dealing 15 points of slashing damage as it gouges your flesh and makes purchase upon your body. I then need you to make a strength saving throw.
Okie doke. Strength saving throw. That is a whopping 18.
Okay. Describe to me how you barely managed to escape this thing's grasp.
So I imagine as the first talon maybe swung over June's one-horned head, he ducked, and then he popped up just a little too soon, and so the second swipe of the other talon caught him right across the stomach where the chainmail doesn't quite reach. It almost looks like he took the chainmail maybe from a fallen corpse or something that he found during his travels. It's human-sized. It's not bonekin-sized. And these talons rake across his stomach and then try to find purchase, and he bats the talons away weakly with his shield, feeling the warmth of his own blood spilling down his abdomen as he steps back surprisingly nimbly for someone of his height.
And June, it is now your turn.
Oh, man. Yeah, he's going to try this. So he, feeling the searing, fiery hot pain across his midsection, for a moment again, that fleeting desire to run from this colossal thing fills June's head, but then it is blotted out by something else. And the group would see him suddenly stand up straight, his eyes blazing with this blue, almost teal-colored light. And again, this spectral image of this massive Urstag materializes over him, and it speaks. And he's going to use one of his paladin class features, which is speak with animals. It takes an action to cast, and this creature would just hear this booming voice that is both June's and not June's. Ask it, "Defiler, why are you in this place, this holy place? Be gone now." And that's going to be his action.
Okay. And you can hear a response, yes?
Correct.
Okay. So this thing replies again, kind of in your head. It opens its mouth as if to make a call, but nothing emits to any of the rest of you. But June, inside your head, you hear, "I come for hunger. My belly aches and it needs food. Hungry."
Can I go ahead and talk to it again? I mean, I'm more than happy to spend my turn doing that if that's
Yeah.
If that's what you want. Yeah. So, and again, I think the spectral Urstag would just shake its head, these antlers that are there but not there, almost seeming like they would scrape against the top of this cavern of this shrine. And the voice would just say, "Find your sustenance elsewhere, creature. This is a sacred place. This is Mydakona's place. Leave now. You will not be warned again."
Okay, make me an intimidation check.
Okay. I am not too terrible at this. That is a natural 20 for a 22.
Okay. This thing lowers its head close to the ground, actually scoops several of these skulls as it kind of drags its jaw across the ground. And you hear him kind of swallowing these skulls in bulk as it ducks back out of the cave. And you hear the as it flies off, leaving you alone in this shrine to the god of the wilds and war. So what would you like to do next?
I think
you're out of combat.
As the creature flies away, this spectral image of Veld, this Urstag, would turn to face the skull of Mydakona, and it would actually start to walk, not disturbing the skulls, obviously, towards the skull, and it would just sort of sit in front of this colossal skull, just looking at it, and then it would just slowly fade away, like in this golden mist almost, it just vanishing from view. And June, back towards the entrance of the cave, would fall to his hands and knees, the blue light leaving his eyes, as it seems the spirit has done what it intended to do through June.
And the rest of you, now that combat is over.
Sija looks at all the wounds that have been incurred over this battle, and will envelop them in a, the blue-yellow light of healing, as she beckons them towards her. Peace, children. Come here. I'll mend your wounds and mend your spirits. 'Tis noble, our plight. Your punishments shall not go unaddressed.
I think at this point, Arthur has reached the tremendous eye socket of Mydakona's skull, and he stops and turns around, still, both swords away, so that he could have his hands free to climb. Turns around and looks around for this creature and sees that it's left, and sees Sija addressing us. My wounds are nothing, he says as he hangs his legs over as he sits in the eye socket and looks down at his sort of partially ruined leggings that have been scraped up from his movement through the rubble.
You may call it small if you'd like, but even smallest things are things. Just like small insects can build up to a great swarm, so too can your small plates. I will address them.
I would sit and pray a while, then I'll be happy for you to care to my wounds. As he sitting in as he pulls out the mask that he remembers is upon his person, and begins turning it over, inspecting it again.
Again, the sheer craftsmanship of this alone removes any doubt that it may be elven made. There's swirls and all kinds of decorative metalwork all throughout. It's definitely kind of a strange, out of place thing here in this cavern.
Yeah, the workmanship is familiar, yet not so at the same time. The elven style that his master always bore in his clothing and his equipment, but somewhat dissimilar.
You realize that this probably is not simply the mask of Shiaya Jalor, but this is in fact the head of Shiaya Jalor. That this must have been the whole purpose in coming here. How long are you guys remaining here in the shrine before starting to make your way back?
I imagine it'd be a good amount of time, perhaps hours.
Yeah, I
At
was
least
gonna say, Durnan spends some time like carefully navigating his way over to the Colossiahs skull, and maybe picking up what appears to be dwarf skulls, two of them, one for each socket, and he will place like a like a prayer candle, and set it alight and let them melt down quite a bit before leaving, in prayer.
Navarro will chant softly the entire time that these candles are burning down. Mechanically, that means anybody who is healing gets an extra D6 during this rest.
June will actually stay at the mouth of the shrine after his his conversation with this entity, and he pulls out the Urstag head medallion again, and he tries to focus, tries to concentrate, and there's still a little bit of the power that Veld granted him there, but it's much weaker. But he will kind of press it to the wound across his abdomen from where the talons almost tried to grab him after they raked him, and he's going to use lay on hands on himself to heal some of that damage. But he will actually stay and just sort of sit cross-legged, just sort of trying to come to terms with what happened, also realizing this is in a way what he wanted to have happen, as he gazes out at the Lake of Blades outside.
Artu would pray a while upon the skull and then make his way down off of it and just contemplate walking around, speaking with Mydakona as if he were here, and looking upon the skulls, the smaller skulls that are around, with something akin to envy that they should end up here after their mortal life is done, in the presence of Mydakona himself. And hope that perhaps one of the skulls, unlikely as it is that of his masters, and that he didn't befall some fouler fate.
At some point, June will go over to Durnan and just say, "This was quite an experience. How are you feeling, my friend?" And he'll kind of slap your shoulder with this big, kind of meaty hand, squeezing it.
Durnan looks up at you with what appears to be almost a forced grin that certainly lightens up into a more heartfelt gesture.
My friend, I think you will be the hero one day. Perhaps more so than today.
What do you mean? It was the blessing of the spirit, the blessing of Veld, that allowed us to drive that creature away. The creature was a coward. I am most certainly the hero in this situation. Don't you forget. And he kind of waggles a finger in your face. It's hard to tell if he's messing around or not, because he seems sincere, but there's a little bit of a smile on his lips as he says this as well.
Durnan's gaze goes down towards this like makeshift altar that he's created, and then he looks back up at you, smiling once again.
I apologize, friend. You are the hero.
And don't you ever forget it. But you did pretty good as well. And then June will leave Durnan to finish his prayers.
Oh, great Arcoon. Bless that lad.
Artur, what moment is it that you find yourself outside of this cavern, back on the shore of the Lake of Blades?
After wandering and praying for a while, and some time of introspection, he approached Seizure with the mask or the head of this breathless in hand Shiara Jaror, and holds it out to her as he's before he then makes his way back outside to the lake. But as he holds it out to her, he says, "This is fine elven work. I should think of no one better than yourself to bear it on the journey back."
Sija, what is your reaction whenever you're handed this, what is essentially the head of a blasphemer? Someone who refused the blessing of the Colossiahs to become breathless and to ascend.
She holds it in her hand, and the metal is cold, and it feels tainted. It feels dirty and tarnished, and it feels sickly to her. And she can't stand to see it in a place as sacred as this. She can't stand to hold it. And I imagine the city is kind of like on a dock or has a great body of water near it. And she would end up walking as far as she can, flying with magics that she has available to her to avoid the nasty sorts of undead, if any still linger in this area. And she would toss it into the water, throwing it as far as she can. Removing it.
And Artur, unknown to you, I would imagine the fate of this object, this relic. As you stand on the shores of the Lake of Blades, the fabric of these prayer banners snapping along the shoreline now on your left draws your eye for a moment as a small gust of wind peels back one of the corners of these banners, and you see the man that you've been looking for, your master, standing on the shore not far from you. And you realize that he's not quite the same as the last time you saw him. He appears to be one of the blasphemous creatures that fill the streets of this city. Describe that moment, if you would, please.
Yeah, after handing the mask or the head to Caesar, he came outside to to get out back into the fresh air, or fresh as it is in this city as it stinks now, and to resume his fruitless search of looking through the prayers that are hung across, hoping in vain to find something from his master, some further clue. And then the breeze blows his own cloak across the lake, sideways, continues across the lake and blows this banner aside, and revealing his master. And his first instinct, for probably more long moments than sense should have had for him, was just elation and relief that he's found him, and he gasps out loud without being able to control it, "Master!" and begins sort of pacing, like jogging towards him, but his steps soon slow as he sees that this was once his master, but no longer, and his worst fears. And he draws both of his swords, hefts them in his hands, and bows himself down into the peeling bark form. As I imagine, what was once his master moves towards him mindlessly.
This creature, this imposter, does indeed stalking forward towards you as another breeze blows past you, once again twirling your cloak violently around you. And as it then reaches the shoreline, blowing more of these banners wildly about, you see the throng behind your master. And as they begin to spill out onto the lake, you catch sight of the lantern bearer of Belorion, not far, floating between the spires of Mydakona. And as this coming charge moves into a little bit of slow motion, you see a large winged creature attack the elven airship and rip the ether bladder above it to shreds. There's a moment that it takes for the report of the screams to reach your ears, as the visual of it crashing down into the city in blood and ether fire, the sound of that reaches your ears long moments after you watched it happen with your eyes. And that is where we're going to stop for the night. So, thank you guys so very, very much for playing in this setting and in this game with me this evening. I'm going to toss it over to each of you so that you can do a brief prologue for your character if you'd like, and plug whatever you'd like, and say goodbye to the peoples. And then we'll call it a night. So I know Keel has to get going before too much longer. So Keel, why don't you go first?
No, we're off, and then, oh man, what an intense finale. And an awesome session. Thanks again so much for having me, Jeremy. It was a blast to play alongside everyone and play in this great session and great setting with you. Can't wait for more momentum and more games with the folks in this group. So a brief prologue for us. by the time he sees the bird attack the airship, he's already consigned himself to oblivion on this frozen lake in the shadows of these dead.
It went all robotic on us, and then we lost you entirely, Keel. So, we're going to put that on pause for just a second, unfortunately. And let's see. How about Baron? Why don't you go next?
Durnan's prologue is brief. We exit the shrine. I have reason to believe that June is still next to me, along with Navara. And as the horde approaches and the creature destroys our escape in the sky, Durnan lights his lantern. I'm Baron. I have the YouTube channel RWD Gaming, where we do D&D live plays. You can mostly find a way to get into my stuff through Absolute Tabletop. So if you're watching this and want to play in some D&D, let me know. Just put up Waterdeep Dragon Heist 2 weeks ago, and tomorrow night or tonight, depending on what time zone you're in, I will be running the playtest premiere of Valandorn, my humans only grimdark horror fantasy gothic vampires and werewolves and whack shit. Oh my. You'll find both Jeremy and Karen and my all right friend Philip as well as we dive into that. So come check us out.
You're all right, friend Philip.
Yeah, he's all right sometimes.
You hear that, Maddie?
He'll hear it eventually.
Thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to that game, getting into that setting, kind of figuring out what all it's about. And yeah. Keel, you want to try again? Hello? Yeah. I don't know if you can hear me. Guessing not.
I suppose, if anything, it's better now than 2 hours
Yeah,
ago.
right. Yeah, in the middle of the game. Okay, Jason, why don't you take us out next?
So as June Atanog sees Durnan light his lantern, and he sees this undead horde, he just starts muttering to himself, "Jolly June with will of stone, worker of the flesh and bone, stood against the undead horde." And he looks at Durnan and smiles. "He did not run from the fight. He ran toward." And then he just hefts his hammer and just charges forward. Yeah, this is great. I love how I feel like almost every game with you, Jeremy, ends with like, "Oh man, it's gonna be great," and then it all just blows up in our faces for whatever reason. But no, this is great, Jeremy. I've missed playing with you as the DM. You know, your descriptions are fantastic. The images you chose are just it's so evocative. It's so unique. You know, I know you said you drew a lot of inspiration from Kaladesh, the Magic the Gathering, Magic the Gathering setting, but you made it so much your own that it's just so totally divorced from that. It was beautiful. Thank you, of course, to all my fellow players, Connor, Karen, Keel, and Baron. Always a pleasure to play with you guys. Pleasure playing with you for the very first time there, Keel. And yeah, this has been great. I have a very small YouTube channel, Concepts and Characters. I'm also actually doing a live play D&D podcast with some friends now. We call it Flipping the Table. I am playing a Forest Gnome Wizard. It is very interesting. But yeah, so check that out. It's on Podbean, and pretty sure it's on YouTube somewhere. We even have a Facebook page. So check that out. And thank you so much. This has been fantastic, everybody.
Excellent, man. It's been a pleasure to have you. Keel, how about now?
Oh, sorry, folks. I had to come back.
Yep.
I'm not sure where I cut off. At the start of the prologue, like you heard my sign off, or
I did hear the sign off, or at least cool. Most of it. And then yeah, the prologue is about where we lost you.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, just once again, love this session. I echo everything that Jason said. He said it better than I could. But yeah, brief prologue was by the time Arthur sees the bird attack the airship there, he's already consigned himself to oblivion here on this lake in the shadows of the blades once wielded by Colossiahs. And because he had made a promise to his master when he went missing that he would find him and help him find peace one way or another. And so as his master Gabriel in his undead form and the rest of the horde charges towards him, he braces in the gathering clouds form, and the storm of steel ensues, and I'm sure he takes quite a few of them out before he is pulled down himself.
Excellent. Yeah, this is all of you just did such a fantastic job that I'm just beside myself. All right, next is Connor.
Sija, as she lets that cold iron leave her fingertips, she feels something that she's never felt before. Doubt. As she looks back and reels back and sees the carnage that awaits, the great beast flying in the sky, she hears the splash of it strike the water. And that's when she realizes that her hands are not guided by her own will. Or perhaps they are. And she has this revelation, this moment of confusion, uncertainty, and that shakes her faith just for a little brief moment. As she lays, crouching, kneeling at the edge of the sandbar, staring into that water, hearing the sounds of violence all around her, confused, uncertain. I am Connor. I played the Divine Soul Sorcerer, Sija. I had a lot of fun with this game. It was cool to explore the setting of Momentum. Because I liked it. It was very unique compared to other D&D settings. It felt like it had its own little shoe to fill. Yeah, and thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure, man. Thank you for coming in and joining us. Yeah, it's there's some similarities to it sounds like the world that you've been working on with Behemoth. So I'm kind of excited to see some of that play out and what the differences are going to be and what the things that are similar are going to be. I'm really excited to kind of see that get fleshed out almost concurrently with what I'm doing with Momentum. Okay, and last but certainly not least, Karen.
So, in the cave with the skulls and the fact that her vision doesn't seem to have come true, for the first time, she probably relaxes a little bit and she starts to kind of almost tease June, and she makes a little rhyme. Just like jolly June, so brave, stood before a foul creature, it's true, when look is all he gave, and away the fell creature flew. And basically, as she's saying this, and they're leaving the cave, and the words just fall off, and that's when she looks up and she sees the bird attack the ship. And all the horde waiting for them. And then she realizes all of a sudden the vision is back, and this is where it happens. And in that instant, her sight just goes dark as the vision just overtakes her and she collapses. I'm Karen. I have a channel called Myth and Gears where we play some Genesis games. So you can go over and see that. I had so much fun tonight. I love this world. This is like, I don't know. It's just amazing. I just love it so much. So I'm really glad I got to play it. It was so good playing with you, Keel, for the first time. It was an absolute blast. And for everybody else, I always enjoy playing with all of you. So thank you. Thank you all. Thanks.
Absolutely. Like I said, I am just completely floored by what the five of you did with this setting. So I thank you very, very much. giving your setting over to a new group of people is always a moment of vulnerability, and especially one that's so open and raw and not finished, nowhere near complete. But you guys showed an aptitude for understanding exactly what I wanted to do with this setting and excelling beyond even my expectations for you. So thank you very much for being a part of that and for helping to shape the world in the future. And everybody who's watching, thank you very, very much for tuning in, whether it be tonight live with us or later on. I've been Jeremy. This has been Momentum, and may dawn, whatever. May dawn, the title of the thing.
Spare the heathens or whatever.
Yeah,
May dawn give you snacks, and your death
heathens.
is always within reach.
And until next time, may your dice roll high and your snacks always be within reach.